You sit down to paint and think, this will be awesome. I'm going to do it this time. And then reality meets daydreams, and yeah, we've all been there. Your best intentions and plans are met with less than exciting results on this watercolor road. So how do we ensure each painting session will feel successful? How can we increase the chance that we'll be happy with what we've done? A while back, I painted this fun ombre background and added some white sketching on top. It was a quick TikTok project, but it got me to really thinking about what makes for a satisfying painting session. And here's what I came up with. There are 3 ways you can kind of up the ante on the guarantee that your painting session will make you happy. Number 1, paint for someone else. So I don't mean necessarily paint a gift for someone, but paint with someone else in mind. What would your mom like? Is it a particular flower? Or what would your best friend need to lift her up right now? Sometimes when we can shift the focus onto someone else and make our art kind of a giving moment, it can take some of the pressure off. I'm actually going to turn some of today's painting into Christmas cards for my friends and family, and maybe even some place cards for Christmas Day and Christmas Eve. And because I know my friends and family definitely won't critique my artwork as much as I'll critique it myself, I definitely feel like I've taken a big deep breath of relief before I even start this painting. Number 2, break it down into steps. So today we're going to be painting an ombre background. I'm going to mix up some gesso so it flows nicely from my brush, and then we're going to sketch on top of the dried ombre technique. See, I broke it down into 3 simple steps, and I feel much more prepared and relaxed heading into this painting session. You can do the same for yourself. Just kind of break your painting idea for the day down into 2 or 3 or 4 at max simple steps so you feel that much more confident starting off. Number 3, make sure your intentions match your expectations. This is a big one. Your intentions, for example, could be just to sit down and relax for 20 minutes after a crazy day. If that's the case, I would venture to say that you shouldn't expect to have a masterpiece on your hands after that 20 minutes is over. And you should expect that you might have something in front of you that feels labored or frustrated, because honestly, that's how you came into it after a stressful day. Let me give you another example of matched intentions and expectations. So if your intention for a painting session is to really learn and dig deep on a new technique, you shouldn't expect that the finished painting will even look like a painting. It might look like a page full of scribbles. And to that end, here's an example of mismatched intentions and expectations. And this is where so many of us, myself including, really kind of get into that rut. We come down on ourselves, all the negative self-talk happens. Yeah. Your intention is to finally try to paint an apple. You've never painted fruit before. You expect that this should be pretty straightforward and you should be able to do this and create a painting that you like because you've done a lot of exercises with the particular brush you've picked out, you've painted circles before, and yeah, these are mismatched expectations to this intention because you've never painted fruit before. So go easy on yourself. Now come on, sit down with me. We are going to paint this really straightforward, simple session together, and we're just gonna feel really good about ourselves, okay? First up, we're gonna go ahead and paint a few squares that are an ombre technique with multiple colors. I'm gonna be using my 3/4 inch flat wash brush and adding some clean water to the upper left corner here. And just a lazy rectangle, friends. I just want to wet this area and then start to fill it with some color. Starting off with some blue from my Art for Joy's Sake palette. Friends, I'm also working on Arches cold press watercolor paper from the pad, not the block. Then going right in with green. This is an ombre technique, or more traditionally known as a version of pulling. If you want to know more about these classic watercolor techniques, I'll link a mastermind video below. And then just continue on. If you're staying in the color families of like blue to purple or blue to green, you don't really need to rinse your brush. Now going from purple to green, I did rinse my brush in between so things didn't get weird and muddy when the mixes happened. And and then back to blue. This is the general idea. We're gonna do 8 of these rectangles, friends, and then eventually these are gonna turn into panels that we're going to cut out or tear out and glue onto actual greeting cards. And that's the basic process today, so let's get to it. I love this color combination, the reds and the fuchsias mixed with those creamy, soft pinks and peaches. Lovely. How are we feeling about this holiday card so far? Do you think this is gonna be a fun one? Are you excited about these ombres? Let me know in comments, and while you're at it, go ahead, give this video a boop, friends. That's a like. And you know what? I know we haven't gotten too far into the project, but if these ombres have you inspired, that's enough, and I think it's worthy of a boop. Feeling a little adventurous with this 4th square? Oh yeah, let's get into some interesting color combinations. Starting with that gorgeous fuchsia, get into some reds. This is feeling pretty typical. Going to blue, friends. I did not rinse my brush in between. And more blue as I go down the surface. And oh, I like how this is working out because I didn't rinse my brush. There's some unique mixes happening. Now I did go ahead and rinse my brush after that blue, before the green. Oh, I love this moody ombre. Now, just to give you a peek of what's to come, once these are all dry, we're gonna go ahead and do some pen and ink sketching over top. And then we're going to go ahead with some acrylic gesso mixed with some watercolor and add some highlights, and oh, it's gonna be good, so stick around. I wanted to go a little bit softer with this 5th rectangle, so I'm staying with mixtures that have a lot of water in there, and then also some of the more opaque paints from my palette, so the peach and that creamy shell pink, and yeah, this is lovely. All right, going into this rectangle with the ivory, that creamy opaque color from my palette, and then popping in some of the other peaches and pinks, just another calm one. How about that violet before this one? Oh my Lord, those are some incredibly rich colors. I love it. Last but not least, finishing up with some reds and peaches, and it looks like a sunrise. It'll work. Now you might be thinking, Christy, these aren't traditional holiday colors. Yeah, that's the point, friends. I wanted to go a little different. I had a look at what's out there on YouTube, and it's gorgeous. Lots of snowy scenes and traditional looks, and I wanted to do something a lot more wild, a lot more bold, and hopefully you like it. I went ahead and let this dry, and honestly, friends, to get this fully dry took about a good 45 minutes. So just be patient, because the last thing you want to do is go into this with pen and ink and have it start to bleed. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but yeah, it would definitely put you on the struggle bus. All right, I am using a black brush pen, friends. I'm gonna link all the supplies below so you don't have to worry. But the idea with these brush pens, I use them all the time, is that they feel like a real brush, but it's loaded with a really bold, great coverage black ink. And I'm just doing some simple holly and leaves. So a round shape for the berry, and coming out from it with some vines, using a really light touch and connecting the leaves and the vines. And I'm just gonna have fun with it. I want you to just lean into these simple shapes, teardrops with a point on each end for the leaves, simple round shapes for the berries, and then some curved lines in between everything to connect, and just doodle and have a blast. Surprise, surprise, friends. Yes, I'm gonna do a little bit of handwriting here. Now, full disclosure, I am no calligrapher. In fact, I struggle big time with traditional calligraphy. This is like my sad little attempt at calligraphy. It's like, okay, enough for me to be happy with it. It brings me a little bit of joy, so I'm okay with it. Haha, you get that joke? Joy? Anyway, friends, if you don't want to add the handwriting or the words, you don't have to. I just kind of felt like in the mood to do it. I haven't done it in a while, so we're gonna roll with the punches. Basically, this is kind of like faux calligraphy. I just write the word joy kind of slower, but in my own handwriting. And then everywhere there was a downstroke, I add a little bit of thickness to the line. Everywhere there was a downstroke. So on that downstroke of the J, on the downstroke of the left side of the O, the downstroke of the left side of the Y, and then of course the right side of the Y. I just thickened up those lines a little bit, and it gives you kind of a calligraphy vibe. Moving on to rectangle number 2, I'm going for a little hope here, friends. And then I'm feeling like a little bit of like mistletoe. So I'm gonna give it a go. But here we go with my slow down handwriting, and then you can see exactly how I tackle the faux calligraphy aspect in a few moments. I've got 2 curved marks here that I'm turning into leaves. So a simple vein down the middle, that's the first curved mark, and then a few wiggly lines on either side that taper and come to a point at the end. And then add a few veins coming out from that center line on each. And those are gonna be the main leaves of this mistletoe spray on top and bottom of the word hope. Let's get into these mistletoe clusters, friends. It's basically clusters of teardrops where the points of the teardrops are facing towards the main stem. They almost look like elongated grape shapes. That is the best way I can describe it. And then a few simple vines coming down from each leaf with a little leafy sketch on the bottom. This one's super simple, meaning just I'm not filling up this rectangle with a lot of stuff. I'm letting a lot of white space remain. And these little rectangles, friends, are definitely a great opportunity for you doing you, okay? Because you certainly could copy exactly what I'm doing, but you could also just like let it go, be a free spirit, and just do some doodles that feel right in the moment. And if you start to feel nervous, maybe you haven't done pen and ink before, just remember, these are for your closest friends and family. They're not gonna judge you, at least not to your face. You're gonna give them this card and they're gonna smile. I'm kidding, but I mean, am I not? But seriously. These are meant for the people that you love and trust the most. So know that they're gonna be grateful no matter what. And just enjoy the freedom that that thought brings. Moving on to the next one, which is love. And of course, a little heart. And I'm going to use the same technique with the holly berries and leaves from the first panel and fill that heart with holly berries and leaves. All right, friends, I really want to encourage you to do your own thing on these. So I went ahead and did my own thing, and here you can see where I landed. I added peace, merry, ho, 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 all is calm, and rejoice. And I just did a kind of a spin on the same kind of marks that I was using throughout the previous 3 rectangles at the beginning of the video, friends. So now let's get into painting. And here is what we're gonna do. It's so simple. You're gonna have a little separate mixing dish with either gesso or acrylic that's watered down, or if you're using gouache or bleed-proof white, you can work right on your mixing tray of your watercolor palette. And you're just gonna mix some basic colors. So like a pink, a green, a blue, a purple, and of course they're gonna pastel down because you're mixing them with white. And you're just gonna add them very graphically. We're not doing a watercolor texture here. We already have that in our background. We're just doing a nice matte fill of pastel colors wherever it makes sense, wherever it feels good for you. So for example, in my holly berries, I'm going in pink and then accenting with more of a bold white. And I'm loving it. I'm loving the simplicity. I'm getting my watercolor fix from the ombre background, and I'm getting that bold graphic fix from filling in these simple sketched pen and ink shapes with flat matte color. I adore this combination and kind of juxtaposition of textures. So fun. Just a little tip as you're working through and filling in the shapes that you created with pen and ink. If you feel like you're going outside of the lines too much and it's annoying you, just size down your brush. You're probably using too big of a brush. Simple, simple. Another little tip for you friends, if you don't feel confident enough to just go right onto the paper with pen and ink, then don't. Sketch it with pencil first. And then once you have the shapes in and you feel confident, trace those with your pen and ink. Friends, if you are using an acrylic or a gesso, anything that's a polymer based, just a friendly reminder, keep that dirty brush out of your watercolor palette. Make sure you're doing some double rinsing before going back to your watercolor palette to grab some pigment to mix into the acrylic, because it will contaminate your palette. Finishing up hope here and just adding a little touch of pink into those leaves, which I know is super weird, but it actually works. I like it. I felt like the word love was kind of disappearing a little bit on that darker purple background, so I'm going ahead with my liner brush in a really watered down gesso and just adding some highlights over top of the word love. And the rest of it, the holly berries and leaves, I approached it very similarly to the first joy panel. Just pinks and whites and greens, simple fill. Really, friends, this is like a coloring book page. It's that straightforward. Just lean into it and enjoy the freedom. I think this piece panel is one of my favorites. The ombre turned out so smooth and delicious. I love it. And then this swaggy vintage, like crumpled silk ribbon that I was able to capture with my pen and ink feels just really cozy and comforting, and then the little sprigs of greenery. It's just vibing. I'm vibing with this one. Friends, let me know, do you feel the same about this piece panel, or do you have another favorite so far? Is it joy? Is it hope? Is it love? Or is it peace so far? Let me know your favorite in comments. Heading into the 5th panel, which is the Mary panel. And I decided on this one to do an ornament, a little hanging ornament spray. And friends, the reality of this one is if you can sketch the pen and ink holly berries, you can do ornaments. It's the same shape and just some extra dots instead of just one dot in the middle of a berry, and you have it. And then you just put a little cap on top of each ornament, and that's it. You're good. You're golden. Just filling in each ornament with whatever color comes to mind. It feels good. I'm doing white here on the first one. This was my super moody panel. I love it. Starts the green and the blue and then the purples and the reds and the pinks. So good. I am gonna have to be a little bit heavier handed at the top to really make those ribbons pop because it's super dark up there in the background. Moving on to the Ho 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 green panel, and I'm going right into the leaves with some soft peach. I'm really after uncommon holiday-ish color palettes here. I don't want to do anything super traditional. This feels right for me. But again, you do you. This could be so gorgeous in more classic color combinations as well. Friends, if you're watching along and planning to paint along later, here's a little tip for you. Make sure that you have tested out your marker pen, your brush pen, whatever you want to call it, on the watercolor paper you plan to use. I had to do a little testing first to decide on the one that I'm using because some are going to be softer bristles and some are going to be more stiff and work better on a textured watercolor paper. So you definitely want to test them out and find the one that gives you the best line quality, that meets your expectations for what you expected the lines to look like, and you'll be that much better prepared when you dive into the project full force. I'm a sucker for dimensional dots, so I'm going into this panel and loading up that number 2 round brush nice and heavy and just adding some simple press and lift, really light touch, and creating some visual sparkle without the glitter with these dimensional dots. Now let me say this though, y'all know that I am not a glitter gal. However, some shimmer inks and some mica would be just so good on these ombre backgrounds. I didn't go there, but if any of y'all are gonna go there, let me know in comments if you are going to shimmer these up. Just head into comments and say, oh yeah. I could see some like shimmer spatter, like nice and dimensional and really obvious. Oh, it would be so good. Or you could even do some gilding with gold foil. Ugh, yes. Moving on to All Is Calm. I definitely went super non-traditional here. I kind of wanted like a very modern, unexpected, beachy vibe. The background is super warm and I wanted just this abstract hint of waves and a little bit of a sunrise. But somehow, the spirit of this panel still feels very holiday. And I think that's just super exciting when you can bring together elements that maybe don't initially make sense, but when you bring them all together, they just work. Little bit of blue strokes of color into that white while it's still wet, just to add a hint of the ocean. And then of course, a little bit of golden color on that sunshine. And this is where using a little bit of gesso or acrylic or bleed proof white in your mixture of pigment is super helpful because we're going over a darker background with a lighter color. And that wouldn't work well at all if it was just watercolor. Moving on to our last panel, Rejoice. And friends, while this is my least favorite in terms of the way the calligraphy turned out, it definitely got too thick, but you know what? I'm rolling with it and I'm just gonna go all out. I'm gonna go all in on the crazy. And I've been looking for a place to use the fluorescent yellow, and this feels like it might be it. I know, it sounds crazy. let's see how it goes. Going in with my number 6 round brush. This is from my new brush collection coming soon. And oh yeah, the fluorescent yellow, I think it's gonna work. I think it's gonna be so cool. Even though it is a lighter color and I didn't mix gesso with it, it's glazing over the darker green background and creating the coolest effect. It's not quite as fluorescent, but it's still super bright, and it's like glowy. I dig it. Are you feeling me? Are you enjoying this choice, this fluorescent choice here right now? If you are, let me know in comments by saying, oh yeah. Friends, do I put on a good show? Do I make you laugh? Do I teach you a little something along the way? If the answer is yes to any of those silly questions, would you go ahead and give this video a boop? That's a like. I will tell you what, I am on a mission I didn't expect to be on. It's just a personal little competition thing I'm having with myself, and I'm very close to reaching 100,000 subscribers on this channel. I couldn't have even dreamed that I would even be saying these words like 8 months ago, but I am. And so every time you give this video a boop, when you feel like I've given something to you, added some fun and humor and value, whatever it may be, it really helps my channel be more searchable and be something that people can find easier on YouTube. So I appreciate it so much. Okay, I want a little more sparkle, but without the shimmer in the Rejoice card. So I'm gonna bring in some pure white gesso. A lot of folks ask me, like, why gesso instead of white gouache or bleed proof white? I actually use it all, but when it comes to these high contrast situations, I really love the coverage power of gesso. It's a little trickier to work with because it could contaminate your watercolor palette, but for me, it's worth it. If you want to know more about how I use gesso, I'm going to link 2 videos below and you can get all the tea. Did I say that right? Spill the tea. That's like a new trendy phrase. I don't know. You'll have to let me know if I used it properly, because I'm old. All right, friends, let's move on and see how we are going to turn these into cards. Oh yeah, not before I add more dimensional dots. You probably could have guessed it. So good. I am going to be using a really simple little paper trimmer today. You can pick this up at like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. It's Fiskars. It's fantastic. And I've got 8.5 by 11 sheets of cardstock. Now, friends, you know my other business is a wedding stationery business. So for me, cardstock's no big deal. But honestly, you can get some on Amazon. And honestly, you could use construction paper if you had to. No shame. And then I'm gonna go ahead and score the cardstock. There's a lot of different ways to score the cardstock. So you're gonna cut it at 5.5 or 4 1/4, depending on the orientation you want for the card, and then you're gonna score it at the other dimension. Now you could just fold it in half, eyeball it, and then crease it with a brush. You could also score it with your paper trimmer. Now, a chopping type trimmer, it's not gonna work because with a chopping type guillotine trimmer, it's either cutting or not cutting. But with these rotary style trimmers, you can just ever so lightly go down the page and it's gonna create a nice score line. Now, I wanna spatter some of these cards before I even start, before we glue on the panels. That's what this looks like. I've got some ivory shimmer cardstock, this red textured cardstock, and also some silver. In the spirit of my loosey-goosiness, free-spiritedness, I'm going to cut out these rectangles in a couple different ways. So some of them I'm gonna cut and kind of remove all of the watercolory edges. So they're really clean and yeah. And then some of these I'm actually gonna tear, and there's a couple different ways we can tear. What's really important here is to go with the flow. Now, if you're more type A and you wanna cut all of these very clean, no ragged edges, no tearing, then go for it if that's what brings you joy. I'm a little bit more of the let's kind of like dive in and see what happens type of person. I definitely like clean edges, so I want to have a couple of those, but I'm feeling an itch for a really rugged, rough, torn edge, and I'm just going for it. And as you can see very quickly, my going for it leads to some interesting, mistakes, some would say, but I'm going for it and I'm owning it, and I'm a little bit off camera right now, but I am just following that jagged edge that I created and that not straight rip line that I started. And you know what? You gotta stick around because I keep going off camera, but it's gonna work out. Wait until you see how I turn this really bad tearing job into something really spectacular. Here's a little teaser. Now, this freestyle tearing is kind of scary and it can easily get out of control, but it does offer the coolest, roughest, most jagged, interesting edge. The best thing you can do is just kind of go slow and make small tears. If you try to do sweeping tears, you can very quickly tear kind of a crooked line, which is what I did with that Hope card. So I have a little happy accident happening here. This Ho 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 card, I left some of the ombre background from the rectangle just before it and cut that clean, and then also have a torn edge on the other side. I cannot wait to see how that one turns out. I'll tell you what, friends, this is going to be a mixed bag of 8 very handmade, very cool, very funky, very bold holiday cards. Okay, working on the piece trimming, and I am feeling the clean edge on this one, feeling the clean edge. But as I go, I see some interesting things happening on the edge, on that edge that is left with the painted edge. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I might leave that on this piece card. Yep, I'm leaving it. I think it's gonna work out. Wait till you see. Friends, how are you feeling about my crazy, no plan, all over the place, cutting and ripping and all the things? Is it making you nervous? Or are you just loving it and can't wait to see what I do next? Let me know in comments. Moving on to the love card, friends, here's another way to do torn edges, much more controlled. Do a eyeballed fold, right? And then fold it both ways, score it, kind of press it down with a pen or something, and then it's gonna be a lot easier to make that tear. You're gonna have a very even, more predictable torn edge. See what I'm doing there? I'm just scoring it down, flattening it down, and then turning it the other way and getting a nice strong crease. And then that tear becomes so much easier and so much more predictable. So if you're really looking for a predictable tear that is a little bit more neat and tidy, this is the technique for you. Now there is a little tool called a bone folder, and it's what bookbinders use to recreate books and build books and get that perfect crease. I have a bone folder somewhere from college, but I tend to use what's at hand. Usually it's a paintbrush or a pen or a marker that I know, like, that, you know, nothing will rub off on the paper. So yeah, you might want to check into a bone folder. Got these all cut out now, friends. Take a look at this. They each have their own personality. Some are super clean cut and some are just crazy beautiful. That Hope, friends, that Hope was such a mistake. I completely lost control of that tear, but I feel like I'm about to redeem it in a big way. And a little tip, friends, see all those scraps on the right-hand side of my desk there? Those little trim offs, those little scrap pieces that came off when I did all the trimming. Yeah, keep those. Don't throw those away. We're gonna use those too. But you gotta stick around to find out how. All right, here's a look at how I score with this kind of rotary trimmer, and I am just popping that in there at the 4 1/4 mark and just lightly, ever so lightly, running that blade up. And sometimes up and down, just depending on how hard I press the first time over. You might want to practice with this one. This, I'm telling you, this trimmer is cheap. It does the job, but sometimes that little blade pops out and it's a whole thing. But anyway, friends, this makes scoring really easy. No need for a bone folder. Love it. I'm going to go ahead and link all the supplies, including this paper cutter, below in the info section. All right, I've got all my cards set up. I've got some silver, some red, some ivory. And now I'm just going to instinctually choose which rectangle, which ombre, which art is going to go with what color card. Going for Rejoice on the silver, and I'm using my ATG gun again, friends. If you're new here, I believe ATG guns are made for all crafters, and it is a pressure sensitive adhesive, and the more you press, the harder you press, the more permanent the bond becomes. It's fantastic. If you press lightly, it's easily repositionable, and you can see there, it's just wonderful. And it works on textured papers, which is great for those of us making some crafty crafts out of watercolor paper, which has a ton of texture typically. All right, look at what I'm doing here with the Ho Ho Ho, friends. I am not just centering this one. I'm going right to the left edge and just kind of doing a fun off-center kind of composition. Let's see how it works out. I like this, leaving a little bit of that silver margin on the very bottom. a little bit of a thicker margin on the right-hand side, and I'm going flush on the left-hand side over that fold. I think that's really pretty. And you know what, friends? I'm already thinking I might add some painted details as the last step of these cards. So you definitely want to stick around for that one too, because I think this could be really cool. Okay, here she comes. My favorite happy accident of like the last 4 months. This little Hope card. She was so sad. I just got all crazy and ripped her to shreds, but I'm about to work it out. I'm about to work it out. Here's the thing, friends. There is never a mistake that you make that you can't redeem in some way. It may be in a way that you would never have dreamed, but there's always a way to redeem a mistake. Look at that. I love it. I love it. And it's only going to get better. I have an idea. Stick around. Okay, friends, I've got them all glued down. Take a look at where we're at. And this is the point where I'm really starting to dig deep and start to think about the painted details that I might want to add. I mentioned that earlier. How are you feeling? Do you feel like I should stop here or go for it? Let me know in comments. Say stop or go for it. I gotta know. I'm curious. But, I mean, you know I'm gonna go for it, right? But I still like to know. All right, going for my gesso and my flat wash brush, the 3/4 flat wash brush from the Art for Joy's Sake brush collection. And just loading up with a thin layer, and then I'm going up from the top edge of that Joy card, and I'm just stroking upwards along that top edge. And it's so simple, but ooh, it's just a beautiful touch of detail. All right, grabbing the Peace card, and I've got a little bit of a pastel peachy, corally, pinky situation happening on my mixing palette here, and I feel like I need to do something with that, keeping the flat wash brush in play because it is so helpful in making easy, straight strokes that just have a lot of impact. So let's go and see. I'm just gonna go along this edge, right along, and I'm just gonna stroke right. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Now, close up, you can start to see you've got some different shades of pink going on because I didn't really thoroughly mix the color, the pink corally moment with the white gesso. So I'm getting a nice like highs and lows, lights and darks in that color family. And I'm just gonna I'm gonna do it again. This same kind of idea like I did on the Joy card, but with this pink. And oof, it's so good. Just adds another layer of texture, dimension, interest. And it really I feel like these strokes are telling you where your eyes should go. So even in mixed media collage, we have to think about composition. I'm just gonna carry on with this corally pink onto this purple card because this particular background has some really interesting pinky moments. See in that upper right-hand corner at the end of the word love. And this pink just works gorgeous with that. It's a little bit lighter, and I'm going all around. And I love this because the torn edge is white, and I'm not painting over that torn edge, and it just, again, adds just yet another layer of interest and dimension, and that little peak of white really makes everything pop. Oof, love it. Not being boastful here, friends. If you know me, you've been around for a while, I encourage you to talk yourself up and cheer yourself on. It's a good habit to build. It's good for your self-esteem creatively. If you want to know more about my idea of being kind to yourself while you're making art, I'm going to link a video below. It's a good one. If you haven't seen it yet, you definitely need to make time for it. Now I'm just going in with a fuchsia watercolor. Not a lot of gesso on my brush, if any at all. And I'm leaving a little bit of an ivory frame between the card that I glued on and the painted edge that I'm adding now. And again, just gives it that pop. I love this. It's gonna be so hard to decide which of these is my favorite. All is calm. She's a weird one. She's an oddball, but some reason I really like this card. So I'm going to go in again with the flat wash brush, just the corner of it, and do a little wavy border, just a sheer white there. Sheer meaning there's a little bit more water mixed in there. And also I'm going dry brush, sort of. It's like a silky dry brush, if that makes sense. And it's giving me that nice smooth effect as I press down on the paper, but it's also allowing some texture from the paper to shine through. Simple, easy, love it. Can you tell I'm excited? If you're as excited as I am, or even a measure of excited as I am, would you go ahead and give this video a boop? That's a like, and it means the world to me. I look at every boop and I get so happy, and I feel so honored that you're here spending your time with me. So thank you. All right, here's the big reveal, friends, and I'm pretty happy with these, friends. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy. These are making me happy, and let's just take it one step further. As you can see, I'm getting a coordinating scrap for each card. What the heck is she gonna do with those scraps? You just wait and see. All right. You guessed it, friends. These are going to be envelope seals now. If these were actually going through the mail, you might want to actually have like an inner outer envelope situation, and the seal goes on the inner envelope just to be safe. Now, if you wanted to send the envelope with the seal on the outside that was going to get all rough and tumble in the U.S. Postal Service, or, Royal Mail, whatever it is that you're using, just go ahead and use some like glue gun action, and that bad boy is not going to come off no matter what. But look at this. It's just simple. It's a scrap from the card that coordinates back to the artwork that we trimmed off earlier, and it's so funky. It's so fresh. I don't know, maybe you disagree. Let me know in comments if you like this scrap seal idea. Let me know. I'm here for it, but it's okay if you don't agree. All right, one last look at all of these cards. Let me know which is your favorite. Is it hope? Is it love? Is it ho, ho, ho? Is it rejoice? Is it all is calm? Oh, she is a dark horse. All is calm. Indeed she is. Yep. Is it merry? Or is it peace? And last but certainly not least, is it joy? Friends, I can't decide. It's probably hope. Let me know what your favorite is. And if you're feeling like you need another holiday project, if you're super inspired, it's time to paint some ornaments on wood slices. You've got this. Same techniques apply. Go for it and have yourself some ho-ho happy painting. Oh my gosh, that was so bad.